Brothers and sisters, you're tuned into another episode of the Gospel of Malcolm X podcast. I am your host, Brother Eric. As always, it is my pleasure to be back and in the studio with you once again. I'd like to take the time out, as I always do, to thank all of the listeners and supporters of the Gospel of Malcolm X podcast. I know I've been away for a long minute, and I'm sorry that I've been away for so long, but it is good to be back. We're going to be talking about a subject that I think I pretty much left off talking about. So it's good to be back in the studio. I've been doing some growing, working on myself, both professionally and personally and spiritually, mentally, emotionally, all of the above. So it's good to be back, and hopefully we'll have a good recording today. So I'm going to be talking about what a lot of people are talking about, this Diddy situation. A couple of months back, I did a podcast that showed the connection between Diddy, his security, and the Nation of Islam, etc. And at the time that I did that podcast, Diddy hadn't been arrested yet. I believe the investigation was going on or what have you, but he hadn't been arrested yet. And so, of course, as all of you know, in case you're living under a rock, Diddy was brought into custody yesterday in New York. And it looks like this was something that he knew was coming. So in talking about this, I'm going to try to talk about it delicately because the subject itself is a subject that deals with a lot of abuse, a lot of sexual themes involved in it, and it's just overall a very sensitive subject. So I want to take my time in approaching it, and I'm also going to be somewhat approaching it from almost like a free-flowing thing. I know a lot of times I grab, I give you guys a lot of sources and play video clips and stuff like that, and I forgot to cue them up, so I'll probably be looking for them mid-podcast like usual. But I will get into that some. There are some clips that I do plan to play, but a lot of this is just going to be me freestyling and talking, and it's not going to be a whole lot of documentation into the end of the show. So toward the end of the show, I plan to read the indictment in its entirety, and then also we'll go over him being denied bail. He was denied bail not once but twice, and the reasons for him being denied bail, etc. So let's get into it. I'm going to start here with just talking about the rise of women in society in general. So what we are witnessing is and if you aren't noticing it, and this is not like a factual thing. This is something that I'm noticing more from a spiritual angle, that the divine feminine, so to speak, is taking its place in the world after years and years and years of women being oppressed and disrespected. You got to remember, women weren't even allowed to vote until the 1920s. Couldn't have a bank account till like the 1970s. After years and years and years of women being disrespected in the world, we're seeing now a lot of this stuff is being checked. And this is a prime example of it. But then there's also other examples. Like, say, for instance, I'm not a fan of Kamala Harris per se. But even in seeing Kamala Harris rise up to the point where we have a female candidate that could really be president. Not that I think that she's going to win, not that I know that she's going to win for sure, but she has a shot at winning. I'm not voting for. I'm not necessarily a fan of either one of these candidates, but I'm mentioning this point to just show the rise of the feminine aspect in the world, where we are starting to see women gain more and more power after literally centuries of abuse, I mean, and it's not just like all of this stuff was happening a long time ago. We see it a lot. And a lot of what P. Diddy did, a lot of what he's accused of, and a lot of what we know he did, had a lot to do with the abuse of women, the degradation of women. And there's an extra consequence behind that. When there's one thing to be doing dirt, and then there's another layer of karmic responsibility that comes behind where you are intentionally doing dirt and doing foul by women, whether that's getting women killed, beating women. We seen the Cassie video, etc. That kind of stuff has an impact. And like I said, this is not going to be your usual historical, Brother Eric. I'm talking more from a spiritual perspective here. So in the Egyptian form of spirituality, some people call it Hermeticism. One of the things that is said is that in the mental plane, man is the masculine, but his mind is more receptive, like in the feminine. And in the woman is feminine, but her mind is more masculine on the mental plane. Meaning when a woman has it out for you, they say there's no fury, hell have no fury like a woman scorned. So if a woman is thinking negatively about you, or has negative feelings towards you, that could set a lot of things in motion that could flip your life upside down. And when we look at this situation with Diddy, this is not just one woman. This is not just Cassie. We got Kim Porter, who we're going to talk about earlier. We got there's another woman that just came out that was a part of one of his groups. I think her name is Dawn something, that came out and said that she was sexually abused. All of these other sexual abuse victims, all these women that were participating in these freak offs, etc. Some of them there willingly and they were with it, but then you got people that are not with being abused. So all of this stuff there's a fine line between, I get what people saying, stuff being consensual, and he'll have his opportunity to prove that things were consensual, etc. I don't believe that people necessarily need to be held responsible for consensual acts. But when we're looking at abuse, so we're saying, let's say in a situation where he put his hands on Cassie, if he put his hands on her like that and dragged her back in the room, and then she complied to have sex with him after he did that, is that really consensual, or is that he just whipped my ass and I don't want him to whip my ass again, so let me just comply? And then how there's so many stories that I feel like we may have not even heard about yet. So I want to get into another story that deals with Diddy and women as well. And this is another clip, and I didn't even think it was going to be that early in the show, but I have to pull it up. So I'm just going to be doing it on the fly for now. But there's an allegation that Diddy slapped his mom, according to Kirk Barrows, who was the former CEO of Bad Boy. And he was the president of Bad Boy. He tells a story of basically Diddy stealing his percentage of Bad Boy from him. So I'm going to cue up this clip talking about Diddy slapping his own mom. There's two different clips of it. I'm trying to decide which one to play. I'm going to go with the first one I see here. And basically, like I said, this story was told by Kirk Barrows, but it's Gene Deal retelling the story here. And a lot of people have credibility issues with Gene Deal. I like Gene Deal. I watched his cooking segments when he was doing his little cooking show, and the brother throws down in the kitchen, cooks very similar to how I cook. His story has been the same since he started telling it. He hasn't switched up. Every prediction that he's made has come true. So I don't really have no problem with Gene Deal. I kind of like Gene Deal.
And to be honest with you, man, I really didn't believe it. But after seeing that video of him and Cassie and
1 second, let me rewind it back.
yeah, that video, wow, man, I still can't believe what I seen. And I remember you told me that, Diddy, he smacked his own mom. And to be honest with you, man, I really didn't believe it. But after seeing that video of him and Cassie and what he did to her, I believe it now, man.
Well, yeah, listen, bruh, Kirk Burrows, the president at the time, a bad boy, told me that he smacked his mother. Kirk Burrows even said it on somebody's platform that he smacked his mother. It may have been your platform that he said that. I remember we was in the car. It was me, Puff, and his mother got in the car with us. And we was in the limousine. We was on, was it 20 West 19th Street or 5 West 19th Street? That was the first bad boy office when they came into Manhattan, not the Scarsdale.
See, this is what I like about King Deal. He be remembering the street numbers and stuff like that. When you be in New York, it's kind of easy to, like, I still remember different addresses when I used to go to New York a lot. But yeah, this is what I'm saying. King Deal gives you can tell, like, he ain't just talking out of his, whatever. I mean, I don't agree with everything he says, but when the stuff where he was around, he really gives a lot of details and really is accurate with a lot.
I'm talking when they got the first official bad boy office in Manhattan. Yo, his mother got in the car. He was on the phone talking about somebody to something, and then he said to his mother, "Yo, didn't I tell you to stay out my MF business?" Yo, I want to snatch the fucking shadow off him. I said, "Boy, who you talking to?" I said, "If you ever talk to your mother like that again, around me, I'm going to beat the shit out you." Now, people don't know and people don't understand. Not only was I one of the leaders of the same gang, I had been around Puff and I seen him. Like when the kids ran him down the block the whole 9 yards. Me and Puff had been dealing with each other from the red zone to the building when they had unsigned hype and all that. So y'all thinking that, oh, this is his bodyguard and everything like that. Y'all call them OGs, y'all call them lieutenants and everything like that. I was one of the leaders of the same gang at the time. And I'm not going to let him, as a man and as a person that I am, disrespect his mama. I said, "Boy, if you ever talk to your mama like that again around me, I'm going to beat the shit out you." "But Gene, I told her to stay out of business." Let me just say this to you right now. If she wasn't for her, you wouldn't have no business. And Miss Combs sit there and quiet as a church mouse. And he ain't say nothing. He ain't say a word. Because he knew I was serious. I wasn't playing with him. Now, I said this before on your channel. Any man that put his hands on his mother or disrespect his mother, an ice cube in hell wouldn't last. On the way he feel about a damn woman. He'll quick to put his hands on a woman like that if he do his own mama.
And you said that Kirk Burrows, because I remember I did the interview with him, man, and he a good dude, man. He definitely don't come across like a liar. But you said that he told you personally that he seen Diddy smack his own mom.
I could believe that. I could believe Kirk Burrows. I could believe it. I believe Kirk Burrows when he said that. Kirk has no reason to lie on Diddy when in fact he lied for Diddy and went to jail for Diddy. But that's what happens when you love somebody.
What you mean he went to jail for him? I never heard that before. He went to jail for Diddy?
So he's also kind of insinuating a little bit of, I won't get into that, but y'all can read in between the lines. So, and there's also, you see when a man checked him, Diddy wasn't really apt to respond. But he was ready to smack his mom, talk to his mom, any kind of way. But when he got checked by a man, he ain't have anything to say. And you guys may have even heard the story when he saw Tupac and Suge, how he took off running and left Biggie standing there. Biggie did not run. And nothing happened to Biggie that day either. But you can see when there's a man in confrontation, unless he has all of those bodyguards with him, he's not really about that life.
The federal government was looking for information. Yo, bro, they've been looking for stuff on Puff for a long time. And Kirk Burroughs was hiding documents and ledgers and all this other stuff. And he got caught trying to take him out of his house. And they end up getting all the stuff anyway. So, you know, he was trying to invade whatever they wanted or whatever they was trying to do.
All right, so that's that. But yeah, you can see not only did he smack his mom, but even the talking to her with disrespect that Gene Deal pointed out, it's not good. And if you don't have a respect level for your mom, the woman, that's your number one woman, your number one woman that brought you into the world. If you are abusing her mentally, whatever, and then on top of this, his mom's house was a part of his bail package. Isn't that something? He did all of that, and his mom's house is a part of his bail package after disrespecting his mom, slapping his mom, and all of that, which is just wild. There's another statement that Diddy made that I find interesting as I'm about to shift for just a second into the Pac and Biggie segment of this episode. According to Gene Deal, and I wish I could cue, I had the audio queued up, but I don't. He said that Diddy made a chilling, self-fulfilling prophecy in which basically this was the day that he ended up getting chased by, I don't think they chased him, but he saw Tupac and Suge. They were at one of the awards. I think it was the MTV Awards. And basically, if it wasn't the MTV, no, it wasn't the MTV Awards. It might have been the Source Awards incidents, either the Source or the BET Awards. No, it was the Soul Train Awards. And he saw Pac and Suge, and he got up out of there. And so when they when they went home that night, and after he had ran on Gene Deal and ran on Biggie, Gene was telling the story or whatever, and Diddy said these words, according to Gene Deal. He said he didn't care if Pac had to die, he didn't care if Biggie had to die, and he didn't care if Suge Knight had to go to jail. And so this was like, and none of this stuff had happened yet. Tupac was still alive, Biggie was alive, Suge Knight was not in jail. But these chilling words became almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And when I look at Pac and Biggie's death, now even more so in the irony of both Suge and Diddy being in jail, I see something spiritual and karmic about the way that those two soldiers were taken out as well. And I've talked about this before on the podcast, the eerie similarities in their death, with them both being on the West Coast, both being shot in drive-by shootings, both being on the passenger side of the car. Both of them had unreleased albums that were about to come out. Biggie's Life After Death and Tupac's Machiavelli album, The 7-Day Illuminati Theory, The 7-Day Theory, Illuminati, The 7-Day Theory, hadn't been out yet. And they were both listening to those albums at the times that they were shot in these cars. At the times that the homicides were carried out, they were both listening to these albums that would be their last album. So I think that there's something eerie about that as well. And so we also got to talk about Kim Porter. Diddy's ex, I feel, played a significant role in the spiritual side of this discussion. There's a psychic who I believe I played in the clips the last time I talked about this. She basically predicted everything that happened to Diddy, almost down to the date. And she shared her prediction. I'm sorry, I shared her prediction on this podcast before, and basically it was just down to the T of everything that was being played out. Another thing very interesting that happened is that the weekend before all of this went down, Diddy, who's been accused in multiple deaths, a lot of this karmic energy surrounding this situation, he met up with G Dep over the weekend. And so basically, if you guys don't know who G Dep is, G Dep was a longtime member of Bad Boys. He confessed to a cold case murder. It was a murder, but it was like a cold case. The cops had nothing on him. And basically, he had that song, Special Delivery. He was writing for Bad Boy and everything. And this might have been towards the end of his stint at Bad Boy, or he had just left. His conscience had messed with him so much that he just walked into a precinct and confessed to a murder that was a cold case in like 93. And this is something that we saw as so common with Bad Boy artists, that these people would either die or they would find some sort of spirituality. Like Mace went and became a pastor. Loon went and became a Muslim. What's the other guy? Oh boy, Flavor in Your Ear, Craig Mack. He went and joined some sort of cult, and then he died. And the guy who sung the song "Whoa," he recently died. Like Whoa, recently died as well. And G Dep was a part of the roster, but whatever was going on at Bad Boy, just one day led him to the point that he had to clear his conscience, and he walked in and confessed his role in this homicide that was a cold case. Now, G Dep recently came home, and basically he met up with Diddy this weekend, and I feel like that is karmic. The weekend before this man goes to jail for a long time, maybe even the rest of his life. One of the charges does carry a life sentence. He met up with G Dep. And then we have to take into consideration with all of this, all of these spiritual connections here. Out of all of the women that Diddy harmed, and many of them we don't know, you don't know who has something spiritual working on their behalf. Like there's the harm that could be, the karma that already comes with doing foul by women, etc. But then he could have done foul by a woman that might be like into Santeria or something. She could be into like some real powerful arts, like spiritual arts. And she could actively be targeting him with justification. Because there's just something about this that just seems like it is no accident. Now, from a spiritual side, if I had to bet money on it, I would say Kim Porter may really be doing her thing from the spiritual realm, as it's been accused that her death was not something that was natural causes, and that Diddy may have really played a role in this woman's death. I know that I'll Be Sure has hinted to as much. Also, the woman that made the predictions about Diddy, she also says that she believes that Diddy played a role in it. Now, she's into like channeling, so she basically said that Kim is basically telling her in the sense that Diddy played a role in it from the other side. Now, that is a little bit far from me, but I respect, if that's where she's coming from, that's where she's coming from. Her predictions have been accurate, so we got to respect her when she's accurate. So let's see. The last thing I'm going to talk about, there's two things I'm going to talk about before I get into actually reading the indictment and then also finishing up with the bail denials. So in terms of everything that's happened in the Diddy, in addition to not only just like not doing right by women, but like the outright disrespect and abuse and the possible murder of a woman being involved here. I also need to talk about the protection that monogamy provides. And so, and not even just like monogamy, but through marriage. And I know that marriages have challenges. People end up on child support. There's domestic abuse that happens in marriage. But there's a lot of upsides that marriage can protect against. So some of the things that marriage can protect against: venereal diseases, people being born out of wedlock. And I'm not saying that out of judging anyone, like, oh, you had a child out of wedlock. It's more about the prevention, or at least the attempt of preventing having broken homes. Because there's a lot of homes where you got girls growing up without dads, boys growing up without dads, or vice versa. And it just does a lot of harm to the psyche of the child, etc., to have to grow up in a lot of broken home situations. Now, things happen and people split up, etc. But if you are working things out through marriage, even if you split up, hopefully there would be some sort of love situation there where the parents could co-parent and work things out, etc. So it's just like an institution that provides something. Something better than the freak-offs that Diddy was participating in that led to all of this. Also, I think that we have to take into accountability that the videos with this, like, this ended up turning into something that was weird, because we have not only the freak-offs, there's videos of these freak-off sessions. And then 1,000 bottles of baby oil being involved is just wow. Because like you could go to Walmart right now and they won't have 1,000. Like, I don't even know if like Johnson & Johnson has 1,000 bottles of baby oil on hand all the time. Maybe they do, but that might be the only place where you would be able to find 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Like, that's just weird. And so also that level of promiscuity can bring down, spiritual attachments on you. You end up getting demons, and he's doing this stuff with drugs too. Like, so there's drugs being there, and I'm not saying like just smoking weed, but which is still a portal, or just drinking alcohol, which is still a portal. But there's hard drugs involved in this. All kinds of like special cocaines and e-pills, etc. And then you're flying people in and engaging in these freak-offs. And the prosecution basically alleged that Diddy was, even after knowing the investigation was going on, was still engaging in freak-offs and flying people in, which is not illegal, but that still presents a clear issue of immorality. And I feel like that all of that sexuality is going to be something that's used against them. And then also, I do feel that it creates basically all of these perversions that we're going to probably hear more about. We're probably going to hear more about. Black men in positions of power are held to a higher moral standard by both God and society. I feel like, yes, there are people of other races that may do stuff like this, like in those Arab countries and etc., and they may appear to get away with it, at least in terms of the legal system. But I feel like as black people, we have to have a higher moral standard for ourselves. And I feel like God has a higher moral standard for us. And I believe in this situation is in terms of how this is playing out here, is that basically God is just using the legal system to teach a lesson here, in a sense, or nature, or whatever you want to call it. Is using the legal system to teach a lesson here. And the stuff that Diddy is accused of in these legal documents is really nothing compared to all of the stuff that he's being accused of in terms of his involvement in Pac's death, Big's death, Kim Porter's death, and all of the other instances which are not in this legal document. The legal document is very light compared to everything that we've heard. So we have to take into consideration that this man was living like a wild animal with the freak off sessions, the drugs, and then he's providing these drugs and liquor to others and opening up their lives to now having them be addicted to drugs or looking for this kind of stuff. And you could get people strung out, and then they have to, rely on you for their hit, etc. So the last thing that I want to talk about, and what I really believe set this all off, and I didn't get an article to go into this more in depth, but you guys can look into it yourselves as well. So Diddy had a lawsuit with a company called Diego, and basically this company was the company that was the real owner of Ciroc. And it came out that Diddy didn't even own Ciroc, but basically he was a brand ambassador for Ciroc. But he really sold it to the black community as if he owned it. And so then you got to think about that as well in terms of what is the spiritual karma, what is the consequences of even selling your people all of this liquor. Like, why would you want to have a liquor company that not only you endorsing it, but you trying to sell it like it's yours? Like, I need to be drinking Ciroc because I'm black. Like, that's kind of where it was. That's kind of how it was marketed to me. That was always my perception, is that it was his. It was only after this Diego lawsuit and all of this stuff came out that people found out, and I think he finally admitted that it wasn't his. But basically, he had the black community riding on a lie for a long time that this company was his. So Diddy's lawsuit with Diego, the company partnered with for his Ciroc and DeLeon brands. Another key issue, he sued them for racial discrimination, claiming they failed to properly promote his brands. And basically he was saying that they treated him like they treated his brands like they were black brands, quote unquote, and that they only that should only be marketed to all urban consumers. So he wanted his brands to be promoted in a different way, etc., where he felt like they were promoting it as just black brands, and he was trying to get it to be like a high stakes vodka or whatever. And basically he was saying if he was someone like Martha Stewart, his brands would be more widespread. But after he brought this case out against them, which they settled the case in January, right after the Cassie thing. But after he came against Diego, and they own DeLeon, and I think they own Ciroc now completely, and Diddy is out of the business. But after he came against this Diego company, that's when all of the hell broke loose for him. That's when all of the hell broke loose for him. He had one opportunity that maybe with the Cassie thing, he could have paid her off or whatever the case is, gave her the $30 million or whatever. But it seems to me that his trouble started. He pissed somebody off with this Diego brand. And let me look and see if I can find out how powerful this brand, because I know that they own more than just the liquor. I think they own like KFCs, etc. Let me check this out real quick. right. So we're looking here. So this is a multinational company. They had a merger with Guinness. It's valued at $96 billion. So you know that the players in this are big players. Diego owns Johnny Walker, Smirnoff, Bailey's, Tanqueray, Guinness, Crown Royal. The company has significant stakes in the tequila industry. They acquired Don Julio and Casamigos. Everybody's drinking those drinks right now. Additionally, they have partnered with Sean Combs to promote Ciroc Vodka and jointly acquired De Leon Tequila. However, this partnership ended in 2024 due to legal disputes between Diego and Diddy. The company has broad international presence with major acquisitions in China, Brazil, India. But I think they also own like KFC. Let me see. I think they own restaurants too. But yeah, I mean, this is like big billions, big business. So I wasn't able to find. They have some bars, some clubs, and restaurants worldwide. But okay, I wasn't able to get down to the restaurant business. But you could just tell, like, these weren't no small players. These are big people. Let's see something. Check one more thing. So they've had several billionaires been connected with Diego. Several billionaires through collaborations, partnerships, or whatever. Diddy, he's definitely not a billionaire now, but they had several real billionaires, like George Clooney. He became a billionaire when they acquired Casamigos, which has become like a real popular tequila. Don Julio has become a real popular tequila. So that's that. That's pretty much my rant for today. I'm going to get into these two articles. Well, one article and then also into the case against Diddy. So I'm actually going to go first with him being denied bail. So this article is from the People. It says Diddy's denied bail again, sent back to jail. His lawyers described as a horrific await for trial. Sean Diddy Combs was denied bail again on Wednesday, September 18th, a day after a federal judge in Manhattan remanded him to wait trial at a jail in Brooklyn. Brooklyn in the house. Shout out to Biggie Smalls. The rapper was initially denied bail during his arraignment in Manhattan's federal court on Tuesday, September 17th, and remanded to jail. A different judge denied his request for bail on Wednesday. Combs' legal team promptly appealed the judge's decision to deny bail and returned to court the following afternoon. In a September 17th letter to the judge, Combs' lawyers described the conditions in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn as horrific and not fit for pretrial detention. His defense proposed in court Wednesday that Carter live at... They put Carter. That's crazy. They put Carter here. Is that like something saying that Jay-Z is next? Because that should say Combs. They put Carter here in this thing. I might have to clip this article and save it as it is. They say Carter live at home in Florida with a 24/7 security team that would monitor a pre-approved guest list. He offered to give up any access to his cell phone or internet, and in the words of his lawyer, Mark Agnafilio, do nothing but prepare for trial. But Judge Andrew L. Carter said that there is no condition or combination of conditions to ensure he will not obstruct justice or tamper with witnesses. So this became kind of a thing here because they were saying that he was reaching out to all of these witnesses and that basically he had made contact with, he was alleged to have called somebody like 50 times, and then another person he was supposed to not had called them 100 and something times, but had over 100 something layers of communication with them. But Judge Andrew L. Carter said there is no condition or combination of conditions to ensure that he will not obstruct justice or tamper with witnesses. Combs, dressed in the same black shirt and gray striped sweatpants he wore during his first bail hearing on Tuesday, dipped his head, looking down at the defense table when he heard the judge's decision. In a 14-page indictment unsealed in the Southern District of New York, Tuesday, Combs was charged with one count of each racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Calling Combs a, quote, serial abuser, Assistant District Attorney Emily A. Johnson said in court Tuesday that the rapper had demonstrated a, quote, pattern of abuse and for years had been, quote, undeterred by law enforcement. Quote, he is an extreme danger to the community, she added. Prosecutors allege in the indictment obtained by People that Combs allegedly coerced women to participate in quote-unquote freak-offs, described in the indictment as highly orchestrated performances, which prosecutors claim he arranged, directed, masturbated during, and oftenly electronically recorded. Those secret recordings were then allegedly used as collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of victims, threatening their careers and livelihood, including if they persisted in participating in freak-offs, participating in freak-offs. The indictment alleges that women were oftentimes injured during the freak-offs. It alleges that Combs hit, kicked, and threw objects and dragged victims at times by their hair, causing injuries that took days or weeks to heal. Johnson told the judge Tuesday that the alleged freak-offs were core to the case, claiming that the singer has the propensity to become violent at the slightest provocation. She said prosecutors had spoken with more than 50 witnesses, many of whom had witnessed the alleged violence, and the law enforcement had gathered more than 90 cell phones, laptops, and iCloud accounts, along with additional thumb drives and other technological devices, which supported the charges in the indictments. During the March raid of his home in Florida and California, law enforcement allegedly recovered 3 AR-15s, disassembled with the serial numbers filed off, Johnson said during Tuesday. In the indictment, prosecutors further alleged that they found more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant, which is fucking crazy, which they say was typically used in the freak-offs. In court Tuesday, Johnson likened the rapper's case to that of R&B artist R. Kelly, as well as the financier Jeffrey Epstein and the cult leader Keith Raniere. Should throw Elijah Muhammad in here too. This kind of reminds me of him as well. That's another story. Agnifilio, who previously represented Raniere at his 2019 federal trial in Brooklyn, called Combs' case night and day, telling the judge that unlike the other 3 men, Combs is not accused of sexually abusing minors. He further argued that the sexual interactions had been between consenting adults and that the singer should not be shamed for his desires. Is it sex trafficking? Agnifilio asked Tuesday. Not if everyone wants to be there. We are not all better off and the federal government comes into our bedrooms, he added. Then, acknowledging the singer sitting in court nearby with 2 U.S. Marshals standing at attention behind him, he continued, they are coming into this man's bedroom and making judgment. On Tuesday, Agnifilio proposed a $50 million bond secured by the rapper's $48 million residence, the mortgage of which his lawyer said he paid off in anticipation of the indictment. Magistrate Judge and then the other $2 million, I guess, is coming from his mom's house, his mom who he slapped, which is crazy. Magistrate Judge Robin F. Tarnowski, who initially denied the rapper's bail on Tuesday, noted his alleged substance abuse and what seems like anger issues, telling Combs that she was sending him to jail. I don't know that you can trust yourself not to harm people, she said. And look, the judge that initially denied him bail was a woman. And this man has been making all kinds of preparations to in search of bail, turning in passports, cooperating everywhere, etc. But it's a no. Now, some of this, guys, I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna say it real quick, and then I'm gonna get into the next part. Some of this all kind of seems like a show. Like, looking at Diddy, sometimes you just wonder, like, is this the same person? Like, what is going on here? Is this some sort of show that's being put before us? You know, like, is this the same person from the 90s or whatever the case is? You just never know what kind of trickery is going on. But assuming that it is, this is where we are, and there's hella pay. There's hella pay. Women have been violated. Men have been violated in a lot of these cases. We haven't even begun to talk about the men. Even the guy who talked about him slapping his mom, Kirk Barrows, was in some ways violated by Diddy, even after going out his way, lying for Diddy to help Diddy, etc. All right, so I'm going to move on to the indictment, which I really don't feel like reading. It's a 14-page indictment, but we'll go ahead and get through it best I can, and then we'll go ahead and close it off. So for decades, Sean Combs, a.k.a. Puff Diddy, this is count one, the grand jury charges. Count one. Overview. For decades, Sean Combs, a.k.a. Puff Daddy, a.k.a. P. Diddy, a.k.a. Diddy, a.k.a. PD, a.k.a. Love, the defendant, abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on his employees, resources, and the influence of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, robbery, and obstruction of justice. 2. Sean Combs, aka all those other names, the defendant, operated his business and headquartered at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, Combs Global. Corporate entities in the Combs business included, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line. Give me just a second, y'all. I gotta move something. An apparel line, alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, a television network, and a media company. At all times relevant in this indictment, Sean Combs, the defendant, engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse towards women and other individuals. This abuse was at times verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As a part of his patterns of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with male commercial sex workers. At times, Combs and others acting at his direction, made arrangements for women and commercial sex workers to fly to Combs' location. Combs ensured participation from the women, among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support and threatening to cut off the same, and using intimidation and violence. 4. Physical abuse. The defendant was recurrent and widely known on numerous occasions from at least in or about 2009 and continuing for years. Combs assaulted women by, among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. These assaults were at times witnessed by others and included one instance at a Los Angeles hotel in or about March 2016. which was captured on video and later publicly reported. And if I'm not mistaken, it was March when that video, I believe, may have been released. So that was like March, 8 years later, where Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a woman as she was attempting to leave. When a member of the hotel security staff intervened, Combs attempted to bribe the staff member to ensure silence. Combs' violence was also not limited to these women. It extended to his employees, witnesses to his abuse, and others. Sean Combs, the defendant, used the Combs business, including certain employees, to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his abuse and commercial sex. Those employees, including security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, and other close associates, acted as Combs' intermediaries, and their conduct was facilitated and assisted by Combs' control of the Combs business. From at least in or about 2008, on or about the date of the filing of this indictment, Diddy, the defendant, and others known and unknown were members and associates of a criminal organization, the Combs Enterprise or the Enterprise. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for the purposes of prostitution, coercion and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Combs Enterprises, including its leadership and its members and its associates, constituted an enterprise as defined by Title 18, United States Code section, that is a group of individuals associated, in fact, although not a legal entity. The Combs Enterprise consisting of Sean Combs, and then it names some other entities: Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, individuals employed by, associated with Combs Enterprises. Combs Enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for a common purposes of achieving the objectives of the Combs Enterprise. The Combs Enterprise was engaged in its activities affected interstate foreign commerce. The Combs Enterprise operated in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. At all times relevant to the indictment, Sean Combs, the defendant, was the leader of Combs Enterprise. Sean Combs, the defendant, and others, known and unknown, participated in unlawful and other activities related to the conduct of the Combs Enterprise affairs. These individuals included certain Combs business employees, such as members of Combs security staff, household staff, personal assistants, high-ranking supervisors, as well as other associates of Combs. The purpose of the Combs Enterprise included the following: operating a global business in the media, entertainment, and lifestyle industry, including, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network media company. Preserving the other purpose, B, preserving the promoting and enhancing the power, reputation of the defendant. All right. So C, enriching members and associates of the enterprise, including its leader Combs, and in particular, who demonstrated loyalty to Combs and willingness to conceal his crimes. D, preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power of Combs Enterprise, including the power of its leader Combs, through violence, use of firearms, threats of violence, coercion, and verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. E, fulfilling the personal desires of Combs, particularly those related to Combs' sexual gratification, including through the exploitation of women and the use of commercial sex workers. F, enabling Combs and other members and associates of Combs Enterprise to engage in unlawful acts of violence, including sexual abuse, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for the purposes of prostitution, coercion, and the enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics distribution, and other crimes, and concealing the commission of such acts. G. Securing absolute loyalty from members of the Combs enterprise, including through acts of violence and threats. H. Protecting Combs enterprise and its members and associates, including Combs, from the detection and prosecution by law enforcement authorities through acts of intimidation, manipulation, bribery, and threats of retaliation against individuals who witnessed the crimes committed by members and associates of the enterprise. Means and methods of the enterprise. 12. Among the means and methods of the Sean Combs enterprise. And I might have to cut this off, guys. We'll summarize it because we're going into a lot of stuff here. Let me identify some key points because I don't want to get this to get too boring. So Combs, among other members and associates, basically they're saying that they were arranging these freak-offs. They were transporting people. Sometimes the freak-offs lasted multiple days and often involved multiple commercial sex workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes, unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of the victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. So imagine you just having so much wild orgy sex that after, and taking all of these drugs, that afterwards, like, all right, let's do our IVs now. We're going to get some IVs to rehydrate and to get going from all of this drug abuse and wild sex. Man, this is crazy. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff, blah, 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 blah. Combs subjected victims to physical, emotional, verbal abuse to engage in freak-offs. So Combs maintained control over his victims, among things, physical violence, promises of career opportunities, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victim's appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances. During and separate from freak-offs, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, and threw objects and dragged victims, at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries. Okay, we talked about that earlier. When employees witness abuse, Combs would threaten them. Combs, racketeering, P. Diddy, multiple offenses, narcotics, controlled substances. From about 2009, blah, blah. And then they're talking about him transporting people for the purposes of sex, flying people out. All right, so that's pretty much going to be it on that. The only other thing that I can read that may be useful is, let's see how much time he's facing for each of these counts. And then we're going to wrap it up. Pause. All right. Just a second. All right, so the source on this one looks like it's going to be Reuters. No, let's see. Let's go with another one. Celebrity news. We'll go with Newsweek. Here's how much time Diddy can be facing for each count. All in all, let's see. Sean Diddy Combs, who was arrested and indicted, facing serious charges September 17th. The 54-year-old rapper pleaded not guilty to 3 charges against him. So he was charged with 1 count of racketeering, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. 1 count of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison and a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years in prison, and transportation for the purposes of prostitution, which carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. So even if he got 10 years, still will be looking at coming home at 64. 15 years, even older than that. So he would almost be 70 when he got out. I think he's going to take some. I could see some type of plea being taken here, where they might take off one of the racketeering charges, and he might plead to the coercion, or he might plead to one of the other ones and take 10, and do about 8.5. Because that's what you gotta do 85% of your time. So yeah, he'll do 8.5. So his time probably would start now. So with 8.5, we're looking at what 2032, something like that. So a little bit over 2032. So that's what we're looking at here. So I will probably follow up on this case again. I really want to do a whole podcast, to be for real with y'all, analyzing the similarities between Elijah Muhammad and Diddy. I really want to do a podcast just analyzing. There's a lot of similarities between these 2 characters. More than you would think. It's just that Elijah Muhammad was really clicked in, and he avoided this type of thing happening because he stayed in good with the powers that be. So, for instance, the guy in the oil, who they say is the one that hit Kennedy off, I can't think of his name right now. There's a white guy that was really big in the oil company, but he basically kept Elijah in check. I talked about it in my song. I cannot remember this guy's name right now, but you can look it up. He's a big player in the Texas oil industry. Remember, JFK got hit in Texas. And basically, once JFK got hit, Elijah got shook. Like Malcolm said, he never seen a man as afraid as Elijah was. After JFK got hit, he was shook down. And he might have known that it came from, what is that guy's name? Let me find his name. Oh boy. H.L. Hunt. That's his name. H.L. Hunt. Big player during that time. So Elijah, he was tapped in. He was masonically tapped in. He was tapped in all around. He talked a good black game, but he really wasn't about that life. And he got called to task when Malcolm was trying to make them about that life, and Elijah was like, no, I'm about this money. I'm not about the revolution. I'm not about black people. I'm about my own interests. So thank you so much for listening, brothers and sisters. I really, really appreciate it. I don't know when I'll be back with another podcast episode, but I hope it will be soon. I always appreciate that love and support. Always feel free to, hit me up on Instagram. I'm L Summers for president, L_Summers, the number 4 president on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. You can shoot me an email. We got this on YouTube these days as well. So feel free to hit me up. I always appreciate the love and support. Until the next episode of the Gospel of Malcolm X podcast, peace.